So this is the presentation layer, means you can the UI that is appearing to you. So the beautiful layouts and pages will appear because of this presentation layer only. That is presenting to you. So that's the presentation layer means. So application layer means the application code will be there. So the application code will be there. Application code, like you have a, you can write using Java or Python or .NET or C#. So anything you can use to write all this, right? So that's the this application layer means what is there. The main application logic, how it has to work, what calculations it has to calculate, all you will write in the code, right? That is there in the application layer. So third layer is a data layer. Any application has this data layer. So the data layer contains the data, basically database, right? The database can be Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle database, PostgreSQL, MongoDB. Any like this, you have many databases. Any database you can use to store your application data. Okay, so that's what the any applications, these three layers will be there. Then what is API? So can you give some examples, API examples? API means application programming interface. So it enables the communication and data exchange between two separate systems. Basically, it talks between two systems. That's the API means. Suppose take a simple example in your e-commerce website, you're buying a product. So after adding the product to the cart, then address you provide, then it will go to payment gateway, right? So how it is interacting like Amazon with your bank account. They cannot develop the entire bank application in this Amazon, right? That's not possible. If one bank, it is okay, but there are credit card, debit card, wallets, UPI, so many are there. How they are interacting with them? Those are different applications again. Bank is a different application. How it is interacting? That's what with the API only it will be done. Your payment is doing how? So it is through API only. The correction will happen to that particular bank based on your details, and the amount will be deducted in the bank end, and your payment will be succeeded in the Amazon. How it is happening? Because of API only that is happening. So this is a best example, and daily life you are doing that. That's where the importance of APIs. Suppose another example, let me give you APIs. So you are using a Red Bus, right? Red Bus or abibus.com. So you want to go to your place, or APS RTC, and you want to see particular date all the buses availability. How it is fetching a Red Bus, all the APS RTC or Karnataka buses are different pool, how it is fetching and showing in the one page. Different private service buses, all it is fetching and showing, right? How it is showing? But it's a different applications, right? Different bus service has a different application. But how it is talking to them? Through API only. So this, wherever the Red Bus is showing, the Red Bus will send the request to that service, and it will get the data and display to you on the UI. Same, you take a Go or flight tickets if you want to book. How it is fetching on different flights data. So this is all same makemytrip.com website. If you go, how it is fetching with all these examples are through API only. All those are working with the API only. Makemytrip.com is sending the request. When you enter two destinations and particular date, the journey date, it is sending the request to all the service providers like SpiceJet or Air India or different flights you have, right? So all the different flights data it is fetching and showing it to you. How? So based on these APIs only. Is it clear now what is mean by API now? And these are the Google Maps API, Amazon Advertising API, Twitter API, YouTube APIs. These are all the examples for APIs. If they ask you, give this example. And also live examples you want, you give Amazon, your purchasing thing, or GoIbibo or MakeMyTrip.com, how it is, fetching. All this you can show that. These examples you can give. These are the examples for APIs. Okay. So that I already told here. So this is the one I covered already. This example, you can give best example. This online source code. So what is a web service? So you got API definition, but what is web service? So web service is defined as a worldwide web consortium, right? As per W3C. A software system designed to support a machine-to-machine interaction over the internet, over the network. That is called web service. Sir, API also doing the same. API doesn't need internet also. Without internet also it will work. So your Selenium methods all are APIs only. Open source APIs, those are all. Even without internet also it will work for you. You can download the APIs, add to your Java project, you can write code. You don't need internet for that. Every Selenium API you can use in your coding. So that's the open source APIs will be there, and other APIs also will be there. Okay. So the example for this web services is many you have, like Amazon Web Service, Azure Web Services. So there are so many. Basically, one application can talk to other applications, different applications which is in the different systems also with these web services. That's a main advantage with this web service. What is the difference between web service and API? This is a very, very important question. So all web services are APIs. All APIs are not web services. All APIs are not web services. Web service use only three style of use: SOAP, RESTful, and XML RPC for communication. To communicate with the different systems, they will use these three formats. But API may use any style for communication. So web services are self-contained. API are open source and can be used anywhere. So a web service can be hosted on IaaS, Internet Information Service. API can be hosted within application or IaaS also. So web service might not perform all operations that an API performs. API can perform all tasks that web services can do. So web services requires SOAP protocol to receive and send the data over the network. So it is a heavyweight architecture, not a lightweight architecture. But API is a very lightweight architecture, good for devices which has a limited bandwidth, like mobile devices. These APIs are very helpful. Web service needs a network for its operation. API doesn't need any network for its operation. So that's the difference between web service and API. This is one of the famous interview question. Please have at least 3 points so that you can, so they will be happy. So what is API testing, right? Basically, API testing is nothing but, the developer will write the functionality in the form of functions, like a functions they will write. So whether that API is meeting the functionality, reliability and performance, speed and security of the application is proper or not, you're going to test those APIs. So testing the application functionality without UI, you don't need even UI also. You can directly test with these APIs. You can create the account, you can create a user, you can create, you can update the user information, all with these APIs. You can do that. You can delete that account. Everything you can do with APIs. You don't need to go to UI. That's advantage of API. But this API testing is basically it will check whether the functionality is working or not. So the Crud operations. What is Crud operations? C for create, R for read, U for update, D for delete. The Crud operations are you able to do or not with this APIs? That's what you're going to check. That's what API testing means. So what are the advantages of API testing? So there are many advantages. So API testing provides to the application without a user interface. The first advantage, as I told you, you don't need any UI application. You don't need. Without a UI also, you can test the application. That's the first advantage. The core and code level of functionalities of the application can be tested and evaluated early before the UI test cases. Before you're getting the UI, you can test your application functionality with APIs. This will help detecting the small issues or functional issues. So before starting the UI testing, that's the first advantage. Second advantage is API testing usually takes a less time than functional UI testing. So very fast than UI test cases, manual testing. So API test automation requires less code, so it can provide better and faster test coverage compared to Selenium UI test cases. You will write a UI test case with Selenium. But to do API testing, you don't need Selenium. You just need one programming language and different frameworks are there. Test engine framework you can use. Okay, so that's the API testing, how we are going to do. So API test automation, so it will exchange the data using either XML, JSON, and so this transfers the data between two different layers. So it is basically independent. Okay, so the data transfer will happen independent, like a JSON also you can use. JSON is one of the lightweight layer to transfer the data from client to server. That's what the JSON we are going to use. I'll explain you the JSON format, all those things. What is the difference between API testing and unit testing? So telling sir, before UI testing, you are doing a API testing. But unit testing also developers are doing, right? And what is the difference between both of them? So API testing is conducted by QA team, the testing team. Unit testing is conducted by development team. So API testing is a black box testing. Unit testing is a white box testing technique. So API testing able to assure that the functionality of the system is properly working or not. So before going for the UI test case. So unit testing is used to verify whether each unit in the application is working properly or not. You will check here. So API testing runs after the build is ready. Once your build is ready, then you will run this API test cases. So, and unit testing, each of the code modules must be ensured to pass the unit test cases before going to give the build to the testing team. So that's a API testing and unit testing differences. So that's all basics of API testing and unit testing and web service and API. But what are the features of web service? So what features web service will give you? So there are different features are there. Interoperability. What is interoperability? So you can interact with the different systems. So without any hesitation. So suppose you have a Java-based application, you can interact with a Python application with this web services. So you can reuse already developed functionality into new software. For example, you are developing a new application. Already in the market, some code is there. That code you can reuse in your applications with these web services. Like Google Maps is there. You cannot develop again the Google Maps, right? But you can consume that Google Maps in your application if you need. So that's the advantage with the web services. So these are loosely coupled. You can easily integrate with any other code, any other applications with these web services. So you can extend. So with the different versions and different applications also, you can add this web services anywhere. So that's the advantage with all these web services. So what are the different type of web services we have? There are two types of web services we have: SOAP, RESTful web services. SOAP web services is one type. RESTful web services is the another type. But we will learn mostly RESTful web services. So we will learn the RESTful web services. Okay. So next. So what is SOAP? SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. So it is used to exchange information using request and response in XML format only. It transports the data using XML only. XML data only it will be used to transport the data. And so you can see here client one side and server is another side. Basically server is the provider. So it providing the service to you guys. So who is consuming? The clients will consume the services. So basically in the market you have a clients and consumers, services will be there, right? Like you take a Geo or Airtel or anything, and so T-Mobile in the US. So these are all the service providers. They're providing the service to you, and we are the users consuming their services. So like this, so client will request the data from the server or provider who is providing the service, and you can consume it. So that consumption will happen in the XML format. You will send the data to the server in the XML format in the SOAP. That's for the SOAP web services, how it will happen. So what are the important components of SOAP? There are three components are there. Simple Access Object Protocol, Web Service Description Language, WSDL, Universal Description, Discovery and Integration. So this is the basically a directory type. Every request will be registered in the UD. So every SOAP web service call will be registered in the UD, and then so how it has to perform all be defined in the WSDL URL. This is the SOAP different components in the SOAP web services. So WSDL means I told you as WSDL stands for Web Service Description Language. It is an XML file. So where it will describe the technical details of how to implement a web service, what is the URI, what is the port, which method name, what is the arguments you need to give input, what data types, and all this will be mentioned in this WSDL file, WSDL XML file. So this is all the data will be there. What is the input message format, what is the output message you will get, security protocols, HTTP or HTTPS. So what is the protocols you will use? All this will be mentioned in this WSDL XML file. WSDL XML file. So UD means I already told you. So it is a directory service. Each service call will be registered in this UD and then available for the calls. So that's what this UD means. But you don't need to focus much on this area. Okay, so there are different SOAP web service tools are there. SOAP UI, UFT, Gmeter. These are all tools available in the market. So using these tools, you can do the SOAP web services. But we need to focus mainly on the RESTful web services. because everybody uses this RESTful web services. So everybody uses this RESTful web services so nowadays. That's why very less people are using SOAP, but don't worry about that. You can tell that I know I worked on the RESTful web services only, and you can, so they will ask questions on this only. Mainly very easy, and this API testing, you don't need to scale also. Very, very easy. Just 4 methods are there, that's it. And then some status codes will be there. Those things only they will ask. And the difference between web service and API. And another one, difference between SOAP and RESTful web service. These are the some common standard questions will be there. You by heart them. So web service API, you by heart it. And then RESTful web services and SOAP web services, by heart the differences. So then it will help you a lot. So REST is an architectural style which was brought in to the IT field by Ray Fielding in 2000 for his mathematical thesis purpose. REST means representational state transfer. It provides the communication between the client and server using a HTTP protocol, using HTTP request. So the request can be, you will send through get, post, put, delete. These are called HTTP verb methods also we call them. HTTP verb methods. Get to, post to, put to, delete. These are the 4 methods. So it transfers information from the client in the request parameters information from server in the body of response. So you will send the request, right? And that request will be processed in the server and you'll get the response back. So the response can be in the format XML or JSON or a text format or any other format, you will get the output. So that's how it will happen. So I'll tell you this, what is a get method when you will use, what is a post method when you can use, put method when you can use, delete method when you can use. I'll discuss all this. So basically REST API works over HTTP protocol. That's why you have to, these are all HTTP methods we are using. These HTTP methods we are using because this is HTTP protocol. There are 4 HTTP methods are there. That's what I told you, get, post, put, and delete. So these methods are restricted to storing client status on the state server, like stateless we call that. So HTTP protocol is an application level data transfer protocol, and it transfers the data in the web applications. So consumers and the providers, I told you, right? Just now I told you, consumers who initiate a connection and send a request. Providers who are waiting for a connection to receive the request, take the necessary actions, and return a message with the result. So that's the servers and the customers means. So the RESTful application builds a logic around resources, but not around endpoints. Basically, resources means the data. So you have in the server, right? The data will be handled by this RESTful web services. So it's an architectural style with no standard description. It's a stateless, no server-side information about client state. A cache is available for API calls. So one presentation layer works with a JSON, XML, or HTML format. You can send the request and you can get back all the data, whatever the information you want, what are the actions you want to do. So this will work very well with the API level and microservices and systems with high scalability. It will work. But how you will send the request? If you want to send the request, what do you need? So what you want? So you need one HTTP verb method, either get to, post to, put to, delete. Then you have one HTTP protocol or HTTP or HTTPS. Then one base URL. Base URL means your application server URL. Server URL. Then slash the API method URL, API endpoint URL, we call that. So then you have to give headers. So which headers you want to give, and then you have to give authorization. So you are authorized user or not? How do you know? So that authorization you have to provide. And then you, if it is a, so get call, you don't need any body, request body. So then you will get the response body automatically. Response body will be there for every get to, post to, put to, delete methods. See, the naming itself, the get the data from the server. That means if you use the get method, it retrieves the data from the server. Your API method will go and get the data from the server. That's what the get method, get HTTP verb method means. So the post method, what it will do is, it will create the resource in the server. That's a post. And put method, it will update the data. Already existing data, it will update. Put, U for update, right? Like that, at least remember. So update the data. Delete. You can delete the resource in the server. You will give which, there are so many users are there, which user you want to delete. You have to give that user identification number will be there in the server. That identification number you can give and it will delete that, only that user. Or you want to update one user. Every resource has a one ID. So that ID you can update. Like you have an Aadhaar card. You want to update the Aadhaar card. How it is happening? There is a put call on that. So when you are applying for the new Aadhaar card, that's a post call. You are entering all your data. You are giving input. So what are the input you will give? Your first name, last name, date of birth, your mobile number, all this data you will give. That's the input that you will send in the JSON format or XML format to the server. That is a post call. You're posting that. So this data will go and create one unique ID for you. That's a post call. Once you create, suppose some mistakes happened, you want to update with that ID. So there is a Aadhaar card number, right? That ID you want to update. That time updating the data is done by put call. Okay, is this clear? Very clear and realistic examples I'm giving all this. So where this post, put and delete, where you can use. So for example, you want to post a tweet or you want to create a Facebook account. That's a post call. So you're creating something new resource in the server. That's a post call will be used. You want to get the info, you will use a get call. So get is for getting the information from the server, retrieving the information from the server. That's a get method is used for retrieving the data. So these are all four methods we got, right? So then what is the difference between SOAP and REST? So it's another important interview question. Please go through this. SOAP is a protocol. REST is architectural style. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. SOAP cannot use REST because it's a protocol. REST can use SOAP, WebServices, because it's a concept and protocol like HTTP and SOAP. So SOAP uses a service interfaces to expose the business logic. REST uses URI to expose the business logic. URI means Unified Resource Identifier. So every resource has a one unique ID. So that based on that ID will identify that every resource that is there in the server. So JAX WS is the Java API for SOAP web services. JAX RS is the Java API for RESTful web services. SOAP defines standards to be strictly followed, and REST doesn't define too much restrictions, too much standards like SOAP. SOAP requires more bandwidth and more resource than REST. REST requires less bandwidth and resources than SOAP. SOAP defines its own security, JAX WS, right? And the REST defines JAX RS is the security. It is internally, it has in the transportation layer. So SOAP permits XML data format only, and REST permits different data formats like plain text also you can give, XML format you can give, JSON format you can give, text format you can give, HTML format you can give, all formats it will support. SOAP is less preferred nowadays. REST is more preferred in almost all the companies are using RESTful web services only. So that's the difference between SOAP and REST. So this is your REST API is how it will be there. Your REST API structure will be like this. REST API endpoint URL plus API method plus parameters will be there. So if you observe this carefully, HTTPS, this is the protocol. Then this is the, so this .com is there, right? Till .com. This is the base URL we call this. After that, your service URL. So then this is the API method. And the question mark wherever putting there's a parameters, basically parameters. So then you will get the response. So you will send the request in this format, these three layers, right? Endpoint, base URL, API method, and the parameters. Parameters are optional. Okay, so parameters are optional. You can give the photos, many photos will be there in the server. So you're getting this request to the photo ID. So that means it will fetch that from this flickr.com, this photo ID, and it will give you an output to you. So that's the how your request, the client will send the request to the server, and the server will process that and send back to the client. So this is how it will happen. So let me show you in detail all the steps these are. See. So HTTPS is the protocol, and this is the base URL or host URL. This is a base URL, clevertechie.com, right? So this is called base URL / and API method. This is the API method. The resource, this is the resource. Lily.jpg is the resource. The resource is here, and you can get it. So that's the how your URL will be defined. So this is the one. HTTP verb methods. These are all called verb HTTP verb methods. We call them. What are the verb methods? Get to, post to, put to, delete. These are the HTTP verb methods or HTTP methods we call them. So plus the URL, unified resource locator. URL means unified resource locator. So you will send first with HTTP method, then protocol, then base URL, then / service URL. So this is how you will send your request to the web server. So what is URI? What is URI? URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. Is a sequence of characters that identifies a web resource by location, name, or both in the World Wide Web. It is a method that allows for the uniform identification of the resources. Resources will be in the server. That resource, how you can identify? It has some name, it has a location, it has both, right? Or some ID will be there. So there are two types of URIs, URNs and URLs. URIs again categorized into two types: uniform resource names and uniform resource locators. That's a URL. URL we don't know right till now. This is the URLs, right? Uniform resource locators. So this is how your URLs and URLs will be. So this is the one you can see. Mail to, here it is, this one. News, this one. And these are all the examples for this. So this URL. What is URL? URL is the uniform resource locator, a sequence of characters that identifies the network location of your resource, like google.com, one URL. So our RMSQ automation platform is .blogspot.com is a one URL. Right? It's identifying the resource on the websites, World Wide Web. Right? In the network, it is recognizing that with this address bar URL. So besides identifying a resource, URLs help locate a resource by describing its primary access location. So URL starts with either HTTP or HTTPS when resource is a web type data. So when when the resource is a mail type, you get a mail to. If the resource is an email address, you will get a mail to. Or FT, if the resource is a file. If it is a file, FTP, you will get something like that. The syntax of URL is like this: http://www.sites.com/ and so on. So this is an example for travel.com, HTTPS. It starts with HTTP or HTTPS. That's a URL example. So this is the diagram. URI, uniform resource identifier, for name, that's one. So URL means it's a part of URI. Okay, your address, that's a URL. So the difference between URI and URL, this is another interview question. Please know, that's why I added all these things. So URI means resource identifier. URL means resource locator. So URI is a superset of URL, and URL is a type of URI. It's a part of URI, the URL. URI is often utilized in XML and tag library files such as JSTL and XSLT to identify resources and binaries. URL is often used to find the web pages, right? So URI's primary purpose is to identify a resource and differentiate it from other resources, either by using a location, name, or both. So URL is a primary goal is to get the address or location of the resource. So URI, the scheme can be anything from protocol to designation and specification. The scheme is usually a protocol like HTTP or HTTPS, FTP, and LDAP, or mail to, something like that. So that's the difference. But what is a resource? I was talking resource, right? But what is a resource? So resource is a physical or virtual component which supports or extends a system. Basically, one physical entity which is available in the server. That's a resource. Like a user name, right? That's a one resource in the server, it will be there. Like images, it's a one resource. Consider a real-time example of motorbike. So wheels, brakes, headlight, fuel tank, all are resources of motorbike. All resources have a name, right? Location and identifiers. Take another example of Google. Now append /maps in last of base URL. Base URL is google.com. So if you write a google.com/maps, Google will launch the Google Maps. The /maps is the API. So the google.com is the base URL. Same with the /news. Google will launch the Google News. Google.com/news. Here maps and news are actually resources in the server. So with the base URL, you are launching them. That's a resource means. So here maps, news, these are the resources in the server. With the base URL, you can launch them. So that's a resource means. So what are the HTTP verb methods? There are different HTTP verb already mentioned: get to, post to, put to, delete. So get is used to get the data from the server. So when you are requesting any number of times with the get call, the data won't change when you're getting from the server. That's why this method is a idempotent method. Idempotent means what? So result doesn't change. How many times you request from the server, the state doesn't change. Same data you will get it back. That's the idempotent means. So get call, if you do n number of times, the data never changes. Same data you will get it. That's why get is a idempotent method. So put, it's generally used for updating the resource. It is also an idempotent method. So this also, if you are modifying the same data, same resource with ID, same ID will be modified. It won't change anything. So that's a put also idempotent method. So delete method, it removes the resource. If you are calling the same delete method on the same resource, first time it will delete. The next time it will tell you, I don't find that resource. This is also idempotent method. Post method is always create a new resource, not same resource. A new resource will create, new ID will generate for that resource. That's the post method. Like a tweets, you're creating the tweets in the Twitter, right? So every time it will create a new tweet, or you are commenting, say you're creating a comment, a new comment will create. This is all done by post method, post call. So creating an account, all these are examples for post call. See, these are examples I'm giving here. You can see deleting any file, deleting photos from account, and all these are examples for delete method. Put method, updating address, changing name, renaming files, all these are done by put method. Existing resource you are modifying, basically. That's a put method. So here you can see U is there. U means put, right? U means put method. Get method is used to retrieves the data from the server, like checking the news, searching anything on the web. All these are get method, get call. So for example, if you open google.com, that's a get call, right? You're searching something, you're getting info, all the results. That's a get call. If what you can see here, for example, if you go to here, google.com, and open the this F12, right? You can see, if you go to network tab, inspect, if you go to network tab, and you can see here, refresh this. Can you see here, all you're getting here 200 status code? You open this and you can see headers. See, the call is a get call, get method. So status code is 200. So this is google.com, you just open. The call is a get call, it is going. The opening the website, that's the get call. You're getting the website, whether it is loading or not. So getting. So that's the network tab. You can see each thing in this very clearly. Okay. So that's all the status codes, as you can see here. See, every information here in this list, whether it is loaded or not, it is showing here very clearly. 200 means it is successfully loaded, everything. So that's a network tab. You can see, so each resource in this space is loaded properly or not. If anything is wrong, then it will show different status code. And post method. Post method means it will create this, like uploading the picture, send a tweet, submitting a form. All this comes under post method. Okay. Creating an account. You want to create an account. you will fill the form, right? Sign up. That sign up you can do directly with the post method. You don't need to go to UI. You just give in the JSON format all the data and you just click on post method and it will create account to you. So very faster than manual. So UI. So that's the advantage with this API testing. So these all I have already explained. Sometimes this question asked what is the options, another method which is used to request information about the communication options available for the target resource. The response may include an allow header including indicating allow HTTP methods on the resource. So that's so various class origin resource sharing headers. So that's the HTTP options. They're sometimes asked this one. The head method is identical to get, except that the server must not return a message body in the response. That's a head do option. So sometimes asking. So that's why be careful on this also. That's why I am adding all these points here. So I'll stop here, and so next class I'll cover the other